Imagine standing at your wedding reception, opening a gift from your parents, only to find a note calling you a slur and bragging about stealing your inheritance. That's what Sophia faced, but she didn't just cry, she orchestrated a dramatic takedown that ended in arrests. How did she do it? You won't believe the twist.
I'm really thankful to be here, sharing how I turned pain into power. It was hard, but exposing their betrayal felt right. Let's get into the full story of that fateful day. Standing in the bridal suite of the Villa San Marco, I smoothed my hands over the ivory silk of my wedding gown and caught my reflection in the antique mirror. At 31, I'd waited longer than most Italian-American girls from my neighborhood to walk down the aisle, but Mark was worth the wait. My black hair was swept into a classic chignon, pearl pins catching the late afternoon light streaming through the windows. My hazel eyes sparkled with what everyone assumed was bridal joy, but I knew better. What they saw as excitement was actually anticipation for what was about to unfold during my reception. "Sophia, cara mia, you look absolutely radiant," my mother, Maria, gushed as she entered the suite. Her designer dress probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but then again, my parents had always been good at spending money that wasn't exactly theirs. "Your father is so proud. We both are." I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. "Thank you, Mama. I hope tonight is everything you've planned for." "Oh, it will be," she said, her eyes gleaming with something that made my stomach turn. "Trust me, tonight is going to be perfect for our family." Perfect. That word had haunted me my entire life. Perfect grades to get into the perfect college. Perfect job at the accounting firm to make the family look good. Perfect daughter who never questioned, never complained, never stood up for herself. But perfection, I'd learned, was often just a beautiful mask hiding something rotten underneath. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of traditional Italian hymns, tears from relatives, and the weight of Mark's hand in mine as we exchanged vows. Father Giuseppe's words about honoring thy father and mother felt like stones in my throat, but I managed to get through them. The real performance would come later. As we posed for photos in the villa's gardens, I caught sight of my brother Leo lurking near the gift table, his usually cocky demeanor replaced by nervous energy. At 28, Leo had always been the golden child, the son who could do no wrong, even when everything he touched turned to ash. His third failed startup had finally pushed my parents past their breaking point, though they'd never admit it publicly. The Bellini family reputation was everything to them. Beautiful ceremony, Detective Miller appeared at my elbow during the cocktail hour, his presence unnoticed by most guests who assumed he was just another family friend. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded, my fingers unconsciously touching the small recording device hidden in my bouquet. They took the bait. "The transfer went through this morning, just like you said it would." "Good. Remember, once we move, everything happens fast. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about my Nana, my grandmother who had worked 3 jobs to put away every penny of that trust fund for my future. I thought about the note I'd found in my father's study 3 weeks ago, outlining exactly how they planned to steal my inheritance the moment I said I do. Most of all, I thought about the cruel laughter I'd overheard when my mother said, "Sophia's too stupid to figure it out until it's too late." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. 3 weeks earlier, I'd come home early from work with a migraine, something that had been happening more frequently as the wedding stress mounted. My parents' house in Little Italy still felt like home, even though I'd been living with Mark for 2 years. Old habits die hard in Italian families. I was heading upstairs to lie down when I heard voices coming from my father's study. The door was slightly ajar, and something in the tone made me pause. "Can't keep covering Leo's debts forever, Donato," my mother was saying, her voice strained. "The investors are threatening to sue. They want their money back." I know, my father replied, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "But Sophia's trust unlocks when she gets married. $390,000. It's enough to cover everything and give Leo a fresh start." My blood went cold. My Nana's trust fund. The money she'd saved working as a seamstress, a house cleaner, and a babysitter for wealthy families on the Upper East Side. Money she'd left specifically for me, with explicit instructions that it was for my future, my dreams, my independence. I remembered Nana stitching my first communion dress late into the night, her hands calloused from years of hard work, humming old Italian lullabies as she worked by lamplight. She'd saved every penny from those 3 jobs, often skipping meals to put money away for my future. The memory of her gentle hands teaching me to embroider made my father's words feel like a physical blow. But how do we access it without her permission? My mother asked. My father's laugh was bitter. I'm her father. I'll be a signatory on the account once she's married. Standard procedure for family trusts. She'll never even know until it's too late. And if she finds out, she won't. And even if she does, what's she going to do? Call the police? He laughed again, this time with genuine amusement. I've got Rossi and Jenkins in my pocket. They owe me big time after that thing with their gambling debts. They'll make sure any complaints disappear. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it. This wasn't just about the money, it was about everything I'd ever believed about my family, about my place in it, about the love I thought was unconditional. She's always been naive, my mother continued. Too trusting, just like her grandmother. It'll be easy. The transfer happens automatically once the marriage certificate is filed. By the time she realizes what happened, Leo's debts will be paid and we can all move on. She'll get over it. She always does. I stood there for another 10 minutes, listening to them plan the theft of my future with the casual efficiency of people discussing dinner plans. When I finally crept upstairs, I locked myself in my childhood bedroom and cried until my eyes were raw. But then, as the sun set over the neighborhood where I'd grown up, where my nana had taught me to be strong, to be smart, to never let anyone take advantage of me, something hardened inside my chest. They thought I was naive, too trusting. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching. By noon, I was sitting in the sterile offices of the NYPD's Internal Affairs Division, Detective Miller's sharp eyes studying the documents I'd spread across his desk. "This is quite an accusation, Miss Bellany," he said carefully. "You're alleging that your father plans to steal your inheritance and that he's bribing police officers to cover it up. I have recordings," I said, sliding my phone across the desk. I went back that night and recorded more of their conversations. They're not exactly being subtle about it. Miller listened to the audio, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. When my father's voice came through clearly saying, "Rossi owes me 15 grand from that poker game, and Jenkins' wife doesn't know about his little side business. They'll do whatever I tell them to do," Miller's jaw tightened visibly. "Officers Rossi and Jenkins," he muttered. "We've had our eye on them for a while. This might be exactly what we need. So you'll help me? Miss Bellany, what your father is planning is wire fraud, grand larceny, and if he's bribing police officers, that's a whole other level of federal crime. But we need to catch them in the act." "What do you mean?" Miller leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "We let them think they've succeeded. We set up the transfer with marked bills from our evidence locker, money that's been tagged and traced. The bank, working with the police, will isolate the real funds in a secure account while replacing the accessible amount with marked bills. The moment they move it, we have them for possession of stolen federal evidence on top of everything else. But what about my real inheritance? Safe in a separate account. Your grandmother's trust will be protected, I promise you that. But we need them to take the bait." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. What do I need to do? Get married. Act normal. Let them think they've won. And then, when they're celebrating their victory, Miller smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We'll show them what real justice looks like." The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal, had to smile and nod when my mother talked about how proud they were, had to listen to Leo's excited chatter about his new business venture that would definitely work this time. Mark knew something was wrong, but I couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. The fewer people who knew, the better. The hardest part was watching my parents play the role of loving, supportive family. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes that I now knew were tears of greed, not pride. My mother fussed over my dress and my hair, all while planning to rob me blind the moment the ceremony ended. But I held on to Detective Miller's words. They're going to get exactly what they deserve. The reception was everything my parents had wanted: elegant, expensive, and designed to impress. The $150,000 event at Villa San Marco featured 250 guests, crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow prisms across the marble floors, and a 5-tier cake imported from Italy that was almost too beautiful to cut. The guest list read like a who's who of our neighborhood's most prominent families. My parents basked in the attention, playing the role of proud parents to perfection. I watched them work the room, accepting congratulations and compliments on the beautiful celebration they'd given their daughter. If only these people knew that every smile, every gracious nod, Every expression of parental love was funded by money they'd stolen from me just hours earlier. The gift table groaned under the weight of elaborately wrapped packages, crystal vases, and envelope after envelope of cash and checks. It was a tradition in our family. The more lavish the wedding gift, the more respect you showed the family, which made what my parents had done even more calculated and cruel. "Sophia, darling," my father appeared at my side as Mark, and I made our rounds, greeting guests. "Your mother and I have a special surprise for you. We wanted to wait until everyone was here to present it." Oh, I managed to keep my voice level, interested but not overly eager. "It's on the gift table," my mother added, sliding up to join us. "The large box with the gold ribbon. We're so excited for you to open it." I followed their gaze to an enormous box that definitely hadn't been there during the cocktail hour. It was wrapped in expensive paper with an elaborate gold bow, positioned prominently at the front of the table where everyone could see it. "You didn't have to get us anything special," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Having you both here is gift enough." My father beamed, his chest puffing with pride. "Nonsense. You're our only daughter. Nothing's too good for you." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Nothing was too good for me except apparently my own inheritance. "Should we open it now?" Mark asked, ever the dutiful son-in-law. "Oh no," my mother said quickly. "Wait until later. It's something private. Family business, family business." Right. I excused myself to touch up my makeup, but really I needed a moment to compose myself. In the ladies' room, I stared at my reflection and tried to remember why I was doing this. It wasn't just about the money, though $390,000 was nothing to sneeze at. It was about my Nana's memory, about the principle of the thing, about showing my parents that their naive little Sophia was anything but. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Miller. "Team is in position. Ready when you are." I typed back, "Almost time." When I returned to the reception, the party was in full swing. The band was playing, people were dancing, and my parents were holding court at their table, regaling their friends with stories about Leo's promising new venture and how proud they were of their successful children. "Ladies and gentlemen," the bandleader announced, "if I could have your attention, please. Before we begin the first dance, it's time for the newlyweds to open some gifts." This wasn't part of the original plan, but my parents had clearly arranged it. They wanted an audience for their moment of triumph. They wanted everyone to see them present their generous gift to their beloved daughter right before Mark and I would share our first dance as husband and wife. Mark and I were ushered to the gift table, where my parents' box sat like a beautiful, poisonous flower among the other presents. My father made a show of lifting it carefully, presenting it to me with a flourish. "From your mother and me," he said loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear, "with all our love." I took the box, surprised by how light it was. Whatever was inside wasn't heavy. I set it down and began to carefully untie the ribbon, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The paper fell away to reveal a plain white box. I lifted the lid, and inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a single envelope. Not a gift. A message. My hands didn't shake as I opened the envelope, though they probably should have. Inside was a simple greeting card, the kind you could buy at any drugstore for $2. On the front was a generic image of wedding bells and roses. But it was what was written inside that made my blood freeze. In my mother's distinctive handwriting, the message was brief and brutal. "Thanks for the cash, slut. Hope you like being poor. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at the words for a long moment, letting them sink in. Around me, the reception continued, guests laughing, music playing, the gentle clink of champagne glasses. But all I could hear was the roaring in my ears as 31 years of family loyalty crumbled into dust. "What does it say, Kara?" Mark asked softly, close enough to read over my shoulder. I handed him the card without a word, watching his face go through the same progression of emotions I was feeling. Shock, disbelief, and then a cold, hard anger that matched my own. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "I need to process this beautiful gift from my parents." I walked calmly to the ladies' room, Mark following close behind. Once we were alone, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Detective Miller. "The note is in my hand." His response was immediate, 5 minutes. "What's happening?" Mark asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Justice," I said simply. "In about 5 minutes, my parents are going to get exactly what they deserve. The money safe." The police set up the transfer with marked bills from evidence. The moment my parents moved that money, they committed federal crimes. I looked at myself in the mirror, adjusting a pin in my chignon. They think they've won. They think they've outsmarted their naive little daughter and gotten away with stealing my inheritance. And the note? Evidence. Proof of intent, proof of their mindset, proof that this was all premeditated. I turned to face my husband, I realized with a start. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten we were actually married now. They wanted to humiliate me on my wedding day. They wanted me to know that they'd stolen from me and there was nothing I could do about it. Mark's jaw was so tight I thought it might crack. What can I do? Just follow my lead. And trust me, this is going to be very, very satisfying. We returned to the reception, where my parents were basking in the attention from their friends. They kept glancing over at me, clearly expecting some kind of reaction to their gift. My father even had the audacity to wink at me, as if we were sharing some kind of inside joke. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, approaching the microphone the band had been using, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." The room gradually quieted, all eyes turning toward me. My parents looked pleased, probably thinking I was about to give some tearful speech about their generous gift. I wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate Mark and my wedding. Your presence means the world to us. I paused, scanning the room until my eyes landed on my parents. I also wanted to share something very special with all of you. My parents just gave me a wedding gift, and I think you'd all like to hear what they wrote in the card. My father's face went pale. My mother started to stand, but something in my expression made her sink back into her chair. "The card reads," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent ballroom, "Thanks for the cash, slut. Hope you like being poor. Love, Mom and Dad." The collective gasp from our guests was audible. Someone dropped a champagne glass. At the back of the room, I saw Detective Miller and his team moving into position. "Now, you might be wondering what cash they're referring to," I continued, my voice never wavering. "They're talking about the $390,000 trust fund my grandmother left me, money they stole from my account this morning to pay for my brother's failed business." My father shot to his feet. "Sophia, you don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Papa. I know about the bribes you paid to officers Rossi and Jenkins. I know about the illegal transfer. I know about all of it." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests were turning to each other in shock, my relatives were shouting in rapid-fire Italian, and my parents were trying desperately to control the narrative. "She's lying," my mother shrieked. "She's having some kind of breakdown." "Am I?" I held up my phone. "Because I have recordings of you planning the whole thing. 3 weeks of conversations about how naive I am, how easy it would be to steal from me, how you'd use your pet cops to cover it up." That's when Detective Miller stepped forward, his badge clearly visible. "Mr. and Mrs. Bellini, you're under arrest for wire fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit federal crimes." The next few minutes unfolded like something out of a movie, except this was real, and it was happening at my wedding reception. My father's face went through a rapid series of changes, confusion, recognition, and then smug confidence. "Miller, what the hell do you think you're doing? Call off your dogs. I know damn well that you've been bribing police officers," Detective Miller interrupted, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Officers Rossi and Jenkins stepped forward. 2 uniformed cops emerged from the crowd of guests, their faces ashen. I recognized them from neighborhood barbecues and family gatherings. They'd been fixtures in our community for years, always quick with a joke and a handshake for my father. "These gentlemen have been very helpful in our investigation," Miller continued. "Haven't you, officers?" Rossi looked like he was going to be sick. "Detective, we can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. You can explain it all downtown. But first, you're going to arrest Mr. and Mrs. Bellini for the crimes they committed using marked federal evidence." My father's confidence cracked. "Marked evidence? What are you talking about? The $390,000 you transferred this morning? That wasn't your daughter's inheritance, Mr. Bellini. That was marked currency from our evidence locker. The moment you moved it, you committed federal crimes." My mother let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. "But the bank said the bank was cooperating with our investigation," I said, finally speaking up. "The real trust fund is safe. You stole marked bills that can be traced to you, and now you're going to prison for it." The room was in complete chaos now. Guests were pulling out their phones, recording everything, the videos already being uploaded to social media. My relatives were shouting at each other in Italian and English. Someone was crying. I think it was my cousin Maria. The band leader, confused by the turn of events, had started playing our first dance song, creating a surreal soundtrack to the arrests. But through it all, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was what justice looked like. This was what happened when people underestimated you, when they thought they could take advantage of your love and trust and get away with it. "Sophia, please," my father tried one last time, his voice breaking as the handcuffs clicked into place, the metallic sound echoing through the ballroom just as the romantic melody swelled. "We're family. You can't do this to family." "Family?" I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't call their daughter a slut for getting married. Family doesn't spend years planning to rob someone they claim to love." Officer Jenkins stepped forward with trembling hands, his own cuffs ready. "Mr. Bellini, you have the right to remain silent." As they read my parents their rights, I caught sight of Leo trying to slip out the back exit. But Detective Miller had thought of that too. 2 more officers were waiting for him. "Leo Bellini, you're also under arrest as an accessory to wire fraud and money laundering." "What? I didn't do anything." Leo protested, but he was quickly cuffed and led away. My parents were escorted through the ballroom in handcuffs, past the 5-tier imported cake, past the gift table laden with presents from people who'd thought they were celebrating a joyous occasion, past the dance floor where I should have been having my first dance as a married woman. Instead, I was watching my family get arrested for stealing from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Guests continued filming on their phones, and I could already imagine the comments flooding social media. "This is why I cut off toxic family," and justice served at 250 guests. The spectacle was everything they deserved and more. After the police left with my parents and brother, the ballroom fell into an eerie quiet. Our guests stood in stunned silence, unsure whether to leave, stay, or pretend this was all some elaborate performance art piece. The first dance music was still playing softly in the background, a haunting reminder of what this night was supposed to be. Mark appeared at my side, his arm sliding around my waist. "Are you okay?" I considered the question seriously. Was I okay? My parents were in jail. My brother was facing federal charges. My wedding reception had turned into a crime scene. By any normal measure, this should have been the worst day of my life. "You know what?" I said, surprised to realize I was smiling. "I think I'm better than okay. I think I'm free." My Uncle Tony, my father's brother, approached us cautiously. "Sophia, Cara, I don't understand what just happened. Your parents, they wouldn't." "Uncle Tony," I said gently, "they absolutely would." And they did. "I'm sorry you had to see it this way, but I couldn't let them get away with it. But the family, the reputation, the family will survive. The reputation will recover. But if I'd let them steal from me and get away with it, what kind of message would that send? What kind of person would that make me?" More relatives began to approach, some supportive, others clearly struggling with what they'd witnessed. The older generation, especially, seemed torn between loyalty to my parents and shock at what they'd done. My cousin Angela, who'd always been more like a sister to me, hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Nana would be proud of you too." That's when the tears finally came. Not tears of sadness or regret, but tears of relief. My grandmother's memory had been honored. Her gift to me, the independence she'd worked so hard to provide, was safe. Detective Miller approached as the last of the guests were leaving. Mrs. Romano," he corrected himself with a small smile. "We'll need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement, but I wanted you to know, this case is going to put some very bad people away for a very long time. What about Officers Rossi and Jenkins? They're cooperating fully. Turns out your father wasn't their only victim. We're looking at a pattern of corruption going back years. Your courage in coming forward may have saved a lot of other people from being victimized." After everyone left, it was just Mark and me in the empty ballroom. The band had packed up, the caterers had cleared the tables, and the beautiful decorations looked somehow sad in the dim lighting. So Mark said, loosening his tie, "Not exactly the wedding reception we planned." I laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. "No, but it was definitely memorable. Do you regret it? Any of it?" I thought about that as we walked hand in hand through the villa's gardens, my wedding dress trailing in the grass. Did I regret exposing my parents' crimes at my own wedding? Did I regret choosing justice over family loyalty? Did I regret standing up for myself instead of quietly accepting their betrayal? "No," I said finally, "I don't regret any of it. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly the right person, living exactly the life I want to live. Even without your family." Mark, they stopped being my family the moment they decided to steal from me. Real family doesn't do that. Real family supports you, loves you unconditionally, and wants what's best for you. I stopped walking and turned to face him. "You're my family now. The family I chose." He kissed me then, soft and sweet under the stars, and it felt like the real beginning of our marriage. Not the ceremony in the church, not the vows we'd exchanged in front of hundreds of people, but this quiet moment when we chose each other over everything else. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Soho, reviewing the final paperwork for my new business. With my inheritance finally secure and properly invested, I'd been able to leave the accounting firm and start my own financial consulting practice specializing in helping people protect their assets from family exploitation. It turned out there were a lot of people who needed that kind of help. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Dinner tonight? I'm making your favorite." I smiled, typing back, "Wouldn't miss it. Love you." My parents had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Leo got 3 years and community service. Officers Rossi and Jenkins were facing their own trials, along with a dozen other corrupt cops who'd been caught in the investigation my case had sparked. The viral video of their arrest at my wedding had garnered millions of views across social media platforms, with comments pouring in from people sharing their own stories of family betrayal and financial abuse. I'd received exactly 3 letters from my mother since the sentencing, all of them variations on the same theme. How could I have destroyed the family? How could I have been so vindictive? How could I have chosen strangers over blood? I'd thrown them away without responding. Some of my extended family still didn't speak to me. Others had quietly reached out to express their support. My cousin Angela had become my maid of honor in the small, private ceremony Mark and I had held in Tuscany, our real wedding, the one that was about love instead of performance. Uncle Tony had surprised me by showing up at my office one day with an envelope full of old photographs of my grandmother. "She would have been proud," he'd said simply. "She always said you had steel in your spine." Guess she was right. The best part, though, was the freedom. Freedom from the constant anxiety of trying to please people who could never be pleased. Freedom from walking on eggshells around family members who saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. Freedom from the suffocating expectations of a community that valued reputation over truth. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst impulses. Sometimes protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who are most willing to hurt you. And sometimes justice really is served. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar, upstate New York, where the federal prison was located. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever my parents wanted to say to me, I wasn't ready to hear it. Maybe someday I would be. Maybe someday there could be some kind of reconciliation, some path back to a relationship built on honesty instead of manipulation. But not today. Today, I had a business to run, a husband who loved me unconditionally, and a future that belonged entirely to me. Today, I was exactly who my grandmother had raised me to be, strong, independent, and unafraid to stand up for what was right. The girl who would have quietly accepted her parents' theft, who would have swallowed the humiliation and pretended everything was fine for the sake of family peace, was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who understood the difference between love and manipulation, who would never again mistake enabling for loyalty. It had taken 31 years and the worst betrayal of my life to find her, but she'd been worth the wait. As I packed up my laptop and headed home to my husband, I caught my reflection in the coffee shop window. I'd let my hair grow out from the classic chignon style my mother had always preferred, and now it fell in natural waves around my shoulders, my choice, my style. My clothes were bolder colors instead of the muted tones she'd always insisted were more appropriate for me. I looked like myself, finally. And for the first time in my life, that was exactly who I wanted to be. The woman who'd stood up at her own wedding reception and exposed her parents' crimes, who'd chosen justice over false peace, who'd refused to be a victim even when the people who should have protected her tried to destroy her. The woman who'd learned that sometimes the best wedding gift you can give yourself is the courage to build a life on your own terms. The woman who'd discovered that real love, the kind worth fighting for, never asks you to sacrifice your dignity, your inheritance, or your self-respect. The woman who'd finally, truly become free.
Sophia, thank you for your raw honesty. Your story reveals that confronting familial financial abuse can shatter illusions of loyalty and pave the way for genuine freedom and support. It reminds us all that sometimes, the people we trust most can be the ones who hurt us deepest, yet courage can transform betrayal into empowerment. I'm Eliza Quinn, and remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.